flying off the hinges regularly. Yeah, you're spoiled.
The U.S. is in a recession.
The real R word is recession. And guess what? The woke man Brandon and his cronies in the White House are stopping you from saying the actual R word. Let's take a look at what Joe Rogan has to say about this.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
I totally stole that segue from a chatter. Good job, chatter.
The U.S. is in a recession at the moment, but it's not allowed to be called a recession.
Well, the government's trying to not call it
contextualize like Rogan using the N-word. Dude, it would be really funny if someone was like, if someone got mad at me. Joe Rogan trying to contextualize it is not because he was talking about the power of the N-word. And even then, I still wouldn't use it. Okay? You fucking idiot.
recession, but it's...
Wikipedia article got changed. You see this?
Really?
Oh, dude.
No.
So
they redefined recession?
Yep. So recession used to be 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth.
Right. Not anymore?
Not on Wikipedia.
When was this?
Jamie, get the Wikipedia thing up because this is wild.
How long ago did they change it?
This weekend.
Oh God.
Yeah, I saw it got locked because people were fucking with it, is what I read. But I don't know how much of that was. But this is the definition when you type in Google, which is the same thing.
So a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industrial activity are reduced, generally identified by a fall in GDP in 2 successive quarters. So in Google, it's still the same. In Wikipedia, let's look at what it says. Recession.
I think it's BM. Bad manners to fucking call out Jamie like that. Like, you're not Joe. You know what I mean? That's not your Jamie. Like, if you go to a man's house, you don't just, like, take a shit in their bathroom without asking them. You know what I mean? Like, you don't go to another man's house and, like, sleep in their bed. Like, that's kind of like the equivalent of being like, yo, Jamie, pull that shit up. Bad manners. Like, he should have said, Joe, can you ask Jamie? Can you ask your Jamie to pull that shit up? Just saying. I'm an advocate for Jamie rights. And Jamie wrongs.
It's a business cycle. Contraction, where there's a general decline in economic activity. Recessions generally occur when there is a widespread drop in spending or an adverse demand shock. This may be triggered by various events such as financial crisis, an external trade shock, an adverse supply shock, bursting. Okay, here it is. A recession is defined by the National Bureau of Economic Research as a significant decline in economic activity.
I think this is the funniest way to cover economic activity. It's the most ape-brained way of looking at, like, recession and its, I don't know, impacts on, like, the American economy, vice versa, by just literally being like, yeah, Wikipedia censored it, right? When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And Joe Rogan is a hammer, and his fucking nail is cancel culture and censorship. So it's literally like Marjorie Taylor Greene saying abortions are cancel culture. It's like, bro, saying abortions is like cancel culture defeats the purpose. I thought abortion was murder. Is cancel culture worse than fucking murder? My man is literally going through an explainer on recession and doesn't even fucking care about, like, the economic devastation or anything like that, and is just about the unironic canceling or the government censorship of recession. Like the term itself. I love that.
Spread across the market lasting more than a few months. Normally visible in real GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. So
in the UK,
it's defined as that.
In the UK, it's defined as a negative economic growth for 2 consecutive quarters. So
that got changed.
So that's what's changed, that the United States used to define it as 2 consecutive quarters, and now we don't anymore?
And people have pulled it up on the archive. So a bunch of advisors, economic advisors, have...
Fucking owned, dude. Yeah. Listen up, government man. Your fucking censorship work on Wikipedia will not go... you can't get that past me, baby. I'm a man who's extremely online. We fucking got you.
Got quotes of them saying what a recession is, especially when Donald Trump was in office, there is a recession that's coming. It's negative GDP growth for 2 consecutive quarters.
Right.
And then this weekend, people are asking them, are we in a recession? Because the second quarter economics just came out, and it's 0.9 decline again.
Have you seen the White House press secretary define the economy as being strong and the best economy we've had in over a decade? Have you seen her do that?
No.
It's hilarious. It's like the wildest gaslighting because she's doing all of these political hand maneuvers that people do.
It's almost like a lot of this stuff is made up, by the way. I'm just saying. Like, a lot of this stuff. Like, straight up. And, you know, most of it is just to instill confidence in the market working in the way that it was always intended to work. But you never know how it's actually going to work. So we're just kind of making shit up along the way. I'm just saying, it kind of feels like that.
You know those moves that people do with their hands when they're talking and they're trying to display like confidence and control, and there's like it's literally like political pantomiming. It's weird to watch.
Tai Chi and political Tai Chi.
Yeah, it's weird to watch because it's like sleight of hand. It's like it's very bizarre.
You think they've been trained in that?
Bro, this is literally is this like Biden derangement syndrome? Like, you know how like libs were going fucking crazy about like every little thing that Trump did? I feel like he's got BDS, dude. Brandon derangement syndrome. Dark Brandon is bringing a recession into the U.S. economy, and it's good. Silly fool. You don't understand.
Neuro-linguistic programming, if you put your hands here when you're saying this sort of a thing, blah, blah, blah.
I don't know if there's clearly an indication that that's what you would do if you were trained, but I think it's more mimicking. It's mimicking like the great presidents and the great politicians who have done these very specific things. Like Bill Clinton famously used to do this thing with his fingers. Where he'd take his thumb and do this and do
Gesture.
that. So it's not aggressive and violent because you can't really hit someone with this. But if you were doing this, it'd be a problem. That's problematic. That's angry, right, with the pointing the finger. The fist is a sign of violence. But this thing is this weird, like a mushy.
This is the greatest way to talk about recession. This is the greatest way to talk about the American economy. I'm sorry. There is no better way to cover the subject matter than what they decided to talk about, okay? This is awesome. This is fucking awesome, dude. Like, yo, did you see the hand gestures of the fucking White House press secretary? Yeah. She was doing a real cancel culture with that one, wasn't she? Oh, I guess you could call that a real silly Billy moment, if you know what I mean.
So the bizarre thing about the recession situation is the fact that it doesn't matter what you call it, right? You can call it fucking paradise if you want, but it's still shit.
Right.
Like all of the criteria of what's happening indicates a recession.
Yes.
And the reason obviously is that you've got midterms coming up and you need to make sure that is in a recession is not something that can be thrown at the Democrats.
Yes, right.
It's a protectionist strategy.
Yes. So don't use that word.
Well, it's not. It's not because it's not defined in that way.
Right.
That's not the accepted definition.
Right.
Well, it was until very, very, very recently.
That's wild. Well, that's gaslighting. And just that alone, is
Yes. We're doing bodies and spaces right now. You're doing a gaslighting, Sweaty. Okay. The Brandon administration is doing a real bodies and spaces. Okay. My lived experience from I'm going to do standpoint theory right now, and it's going to blow your fucking minds, okay? Representative Haley Stevens. Oh, redistricting is coming out with some of the locks. Haley Stevens wins the MI 11 Dem primary, defeating Progressive Rep Andy Levin. That's the first. He's seen enough.
people would think that it's trivial because they are talking about this economic downturn, but it's not trivial because we've always used that term recession. And we've always used that term to define
Nancy Pelosi's really love bombing Taiwan right now. Yeah, exactly.
whether or not the economic policies that are currently in place and whether or not the management and the government has done a good job.
APAC dumped 14 million, final number, into 3 counties here in MI to make Levin lose. Nice, dude.
Of making sure that the economy stays in a good place. They definitely haven't done that. So in order to escape that, that sort of distinction, they're literally changing
Wait, hold on.
policies that are currently in place and whether or not the management and the government has done a good job of making sure that the economy stays in a good place. They definitely haven't done that. So in order to escape that, that sort of distinction, they're literally changing the definition, which is terrible, and it should be pushed back against in a big way. It should be something that people get angry about. Like, hey, you're fucking with definitions in order to pretend that you're doing a good job.
Well, the reason that you attach a sequence of letters to something, right, is to represent what that thing is. You don't change reality by changing what those words actually mean.
Right.
But if you can't control the economy, you might as well just control the language and hope for the...
Bro, I mean...
A lot of people, from journalists to YouTubers, are saying that the White House has redefined recessions in order to avoid declaring one. But that's not actually true. Well, yes, the US has reported a second consecutive quarter of GDP contraction, and this is, according to many dictionaries, the definition of a recession. The US government not subscribing to this definition is nothing new. Recessions in the US are officially declared by the National Bureau of Economic.
Guys, skip Egon 101 constantly. The U.S. Bureau, and by extension Biden, will never admit recession until this last minute because they're terrified they might cause a crash for no reason. The market is based on confidence. Yeah, I already described all this. So if Biden hypothetically admitted there was a recession, it could actually make it worse. Exactly, because ultimately you can't control it or 100% predict how the market is going to react to it. You just can't do that because human beings are volatile. It is the same exact fucking thing for even the talks of inflation actually furthering inflation.
Economic research. And the NBER uses a combination of different variables to determine whether a recession has occurred, which considers GDP contraction, but also looks at things like unemployment. Now, is this definition obscure and prone to subjective calls? Absolutely. Is it deserving of skepticism and debate? 100%. But the narrative that the Biden administration has changed the definition is just flat out wrong. If you use the Wayback Machine, you can go to the NBER website back in 2003 and see that before Biden, before even the 2008 financial crisis, the NBER clarified that, quote, our procedure differs from the 2-quarter rule in a number of ways. So while people might not like this definition, it's been the same under Biden, Trump, Obama, even Bush. A lot of people, from journalists
Kansas abortion amendment results are coming in. Okay, that's nothing. What? It's 5% expected with 70% no votes. Why is chat doing this thing? I thought this community knew better. I thought this community knew better than to like fucking jump to conclusions immediately. Still, no is good on this one. It doesn't matter. Don't fucking, it's 5%. A lot of new people recently. Yeah. Did you forget we're all silly billies? Yeah, that's true. Anyway. First 3 votes counted is 100% yes. Yeah. So that fucking 60-second snippet just destroyed 7 minutes of back and forth conversation between Joe and this fucking guy. I remember learning in economics about how the market is based on pack mentality. That sometimes businesses will do well just because investors rush to whatever Buffett was buying. Market is literally a joke, and a child could pick it apart if you actually explain it to them. Well, that's also precisely the reason why fucking a goldfish was able to outperform the brain trust over at motherfucking Wall Street bets. And that's exactly why the market itself is able to outperform every hedge fund over a long enough timeline, no matter how good they are. See? But whenever I mention that, people get so mad at me. They're like, dude, you misunderstood that. It's so stupid.
For the best.
God. What a bunch of weasels.
Dude, it's wild. But again, this is I think because everybody's opinions and their words now are what everyone's judged on, not their deeds. Right? We used to be judged on our deeds because they were the things that were the most obvious. But now, because social media is one of the primary forms of communication, people are judged on their opinions and their words far more. And what that means is that your opinion is actually, and the language specifically that you use, it's way more important than actually what's happening in the world. And if that's the case, what it means is that language should be the focus. Why wouldn't I lexically try and do some Brazilian jiu-jitsu to fuck around with this? A little bit of semantic fuckery. Why not? Well, because that's going to actually change the thing that most people are taking notice of. And also, there's a concept called two-step flow theory. And what it says is that there are precious few original thinkers in the world. And because most people feel like they have to have an opinion on everything, because that's the world that we live in at the moment, but very few people can be bothered to do original thought and do the research, people just take on the opinion of whoever their favorite thought leader is. So you could basically argue that the culture war is largely two armies of NPCs being ventriloquized by a handful of actual thinkers above them.
That's a great way to look at it. And that is kind of what's going on with a great majority of people, or a large number of people. I don't know if it's a majority, but it's enough to make noise.
Yo, what's up with like every fucking Commonwealth nation sending their weirdos over here? Can someone just explain to me why this is happening all the time? Why is that? They're not sending their best.
It's enough to show you that there's a real problem with ideologies and with tribalism, because that's what people gravitate towards. They gravitate towards a group of people that they...
Yes, if that's true, Joe Rogan is one of those leaders. No, dude, Joe Rogan is literally, unironically, not a person who has original thoughts. I would go so far as to say that my thoughts aren't original either, I don't think. I mean, sometimes I have an original thought or two, but no, Joe Rogan just has a massive platform where other NPCs that follow him repeat what he's saying. Yeah, like the Gauntlet. That is a good an original thought that championing, but that's besides the point.
They feel like they can fit into, and then they can adopt those patterns of thinking and those thoughts. And instead of coming up with their own opinions, they form this sort of conglomeration of other people's opinions, and then they fiercely defend them.
We're making them your problem now? I don't like that. Don't fucking like it, mate. I don't like it. I have more original thoughts than you, but you are far more knowledgeable and smarter. Okay, motherfucker, don't get carried away now, okay? I don't even want to know what you mean by that. All right, new Italian guy just dropped.
Well, that's what you have to speak to.
I watched it this morning and it made me feel so good, and I watched a bunch of his other videos as well. What a cute guy.